This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so this is today talking about what has been happening in the nation as the economy opens up, and this is data based upon last week when they analyzed market data from May. So we have a person here, CEO of Zelman Associates, who said that housing will fare better than expected during this severe downturn. This was a prediction she made back in May. And has housing predicted better than we expected? Absolutely. Pretty crazy times right now. New home sales rose slightly in April, defying expectations of a huge 22% drop. People were expecting in April how new home sales were going to die, were going to drop off tremendously. This is from Diana Olick from CNBC. Again, we had housing go up slightly in April with the expectation it was going to be another off the cliff housing market. Didn't happen. Mortgage demand from home buyers shows unexpectedly strong and quick recovery. The quick recovery has surprised most forecasters, again, from CNBC, and that is absolutely true. And those of us who work in housing recognize that there's still been a demand out there. Interest rates low. Yes, there was a pullback initially, a shock. People who lost their jobs all of a sudden had to cancel their deal. Sellers who were going to list said, let's get through this thing first. Let's pull back on it. The thing is, though, people who were still in the market still were buying. Buyers who were still looking were still out there trying to find property. And now we'll talk about what's been happening. We know that April really was the trough, I think, for the housing market. We do expect the rebound to be quite strong in the May numbers that will come out at the end of June. So this is from Mark Fleming. He's the chief economist for First American. April was the bottom. We're coming out of it. We also know that January 2011 was also the bottom of the housing crash. If only we had known. I was just very fortunate to have represented my son when he bought his first house in January of 2011, and didn't know at that point that that was the bottom, but it was the bottom. And since that point in time, it's been on an uptick since that time. Again, this newest crash, this newest downturn was in April for housing. At least that's what it appears. So home prices are projected to continue to appreciate. So if they look at six different companies that actually do analyzation of these things, they're showing in 2020 that there's only one who believes that home prices will go down in 2020. That's the Home Price Expectation Survey. Five others believe that the home prices are going to appreciate in 2020, and three of those by over 3%. Again, these are national figures. And so if you look at Fannie Mae, they're still predicting an uptick of only 0.4%, and Freddie Mac of 0.4%. But National Association of Realtors up 3.8%, Zelman Associates up 3%, and Mortgage Bankers Association up 4.3%. In 2021, all of these entities are predicting an increase in home prices. And in 2022, only three of them are willing to put their neck out that far. But again, the predictions are home prices are going to continue to appreciate as we move forward. So if people are waiting for the bottom to buy, it's long past. In Zillow's June report showed up month over month of 24.5% in newly pending sales. That's month over month, with new listings taken up 19.3%. That's from Zillow, and we know that that was true in Central Oregon as well. We shared that last week. Both pending sales and new listings remain well up from the previous month when the market was bouncing back from a slowdown in the early days of the coronavirus pandemic. Absolutely, we know pending sales are up, we know listings are up. This is what's happening right now. So here is the economy gains. This was unexpected. We had seen these stats before when everything tanked and all of a sudden all these people were newly unemployed. But this is what's happened with the May figures, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, it showed that in food service and bars, that they had gained 1.4 million in employment gains. In construction, 464,000. Education and health services up 424,000. Retail up 368. Other services 272. Manufacturing 225, and professional services 127. The losses are still there in the hotels, which we all know. We still haven't reestablished the travel industry. That's still hurting. And then government. Now government, this is usually local government, local states, states and local governments. So think about the city of Bend, they have not fully opened all of their services yet. And so there are people who are still unemployed or working from home. But this is still extremely encouraging. We knew that food and services would come back, and they absolutely are. Again, this is from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. So the main gain was by far the biggest one-month job surge in U.S. history since at least 1939. And we know that. When those May figures came out, everyone was shocked. We expected more unemployment, and instead we had a gain in jobs. So that was a surprise. This is, again, the breakdown of the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics from June 5th. That's the unemployment report covering up until May 12th. Of the people who are unemployed in the United States, it was 13.3%. But that meant 87.7% were employed. So for 13.3%, it was awful. It's absolutely horrendous. That's terrible statistics. But it still meant 87.7% of people had a job. So all that awful things we saw with shops shut down, restaurants shut down, we still had people working. Of the people who were unemployed, of that 13.3%, 83% of those people thought their unemployment was temporary. 17% thought it was permanent. So again, we're taking that slice of 13.3% on the left and blowing it up on the right about what those people think. The people who are unemployed, 83% still think it's temporary. They're going to get their jobs back. 70% think it was permanent, that they've lost their job permanently. Of the job losses that are temporary layoffs and furloughs, according to the employers, that's 75% of employers are saying the job losses that have happened are temporary. It's going to, they'll get those jobs back. And there are also news reports of large-scale hiring at firms like Amazon, Walmart, CVS Healthcare, Domino's Pizza, and other companies that saw increased demand in reaction to the pandemic and partial shutdown. In fact, I'd heard that Amazon had hired 175,000 temporary workers, and now they've decided of those 175,000 temporary, they're making 150,000 of them permanent. They needed that much. Amazon was one company that did phenomenally well during this economic shutdown, and their demand for their product definitely grew. Now, we've all probably heard about the miscalculation of that initial jobs report, that really instead of what 14%, it was closer to 19%. The thing is, people have looked at this seriously, and this again is still from the same Bureau of Labor Statistics, that some people who should have been classified as temporarily unemployed during the shutdown were instead classified as employed but absent for other reasons. And those other reasons were usually people taking a leave to go on vacation, serve on jury duty, taking care of a child or relative. Think about that. People who had to be absent from work due to taking care of a child or relative. With all these kids home from school, a parent needed to be home to take care of them. Daycare wasn't available, so obviously absent to take care of kids makes a lot of sense. And when the survey came out, they checked the wrong box. They should have been checking the box as temporarily unemployed. But taking that into consideration with this miscalculation, it still shows that there's been a decrease. So if you look at the unemployment rate in January, this is across the country, we were at 3.6%. In February, we were at 3.5%. In March, 4.4%. But if you take that misclassification error into consideration, we were actually at 5.4%. In April, the official rate shows that we were 14.7% with that misclassification. We were at 19.7. In May, the unemployment rate, again from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 13.3% with the misclassification at 16.3. But it still shows the huge, even taking that misclassification error into consideration, a huge decrease from April to May. A big, big decrease, which means we're moving in the right direction as far as people in the United States unemployed. This is a great, great news to have for all of us as we work through this recession. So employers added 2.5 million jobs, which shocked Wall Street expectations out of water. Economists had forecast a loss of 8.3 million jobs, and that's from the Wall Street Journal. Again, the expectation had been there'd be another 8.3 million jobs lost. Instead, there was a 2.5 million jobs gain. Big, big things. This month is National Homeownership Month, June. And so I don't know if you've seen some of our social media posts or some of the things we've been blogging about a little bit, but it is a time to recognize National Homeownership Month. There's top reasons why people like to own their own home. This is something you can share with your client base as well. U.S. homeownership rates. This is in Q1 results. For if you look at it, back in 1996, about 65.1% of United States households owned their own home. We grew that into 2003, 2004, 2005 to 69.1%. Now we know why that happened. Yes, there was a goal for people to have their own homes, but also there was a lot of manipulation in the federal government when the government started dictating such things as no-doc loans and lend to people. The goal at that point, very laudable, was that everyone should have the right to have a home that they own themselves. But they threw common sense out the window when they provided loans to people who did not have the wherewithal to be able to pay their mortgage rates, which triggered the housing crisis with everything crashed. And home ownership rates went way back down to below the figures in 96 to 63.5%. But we have been back up. We've been coming out of the recession since this point in time, and we have been gaining back up to 65.3% in 2020. So people are going back into home ownership. This is good news, especially when you consider that the people who are buying homes now have to prove very with jumping through a lot of hoops that they actually can qualify for those loans that they are getting. We have strict guidelines now in order to provide loans to people, and that's a good thing. So that way we will not have another housing crash like we did before. So we're back up to 65.3% of people who own a home, which is wonderful news. So here's a thought process. Why do people want to own a home? For one reason, there's accomplishment, a sense of accomplishment. I'm a homeowner. It reflects your efforts, your hard work, and your success in being able to discipline yourself, to set aside enough money, to be able to come up with a down payment, to qualify for a loan, to have your credit score at a rate that someone says you are credit worthy for us to be able to loan you this money so you can purchase a home. Another reason people will buy a home is to express your unique personality. Now, I know we all have been into homes in which unique personalities are expressed very interestingly. Bright colors on the wall, interesting way they decorate, which is wonderful when it's their home. They can do what they would like. It's a way to express themselves. It's also stability. It controls your future direction and your security. You have a home. You have that security of, I'm not going to be kicked out when that house is sold out from underneath me because my landlord sold it to somebody else. So someone else is going to be moving into that property. So the security is, I have this home, it is my home, I have a place that I know I can live. Also, there's privacy aspects of it, creating a space that's solely your own place, your own sense of security within that. And then, of course, the financial aspects of it. We all know that the number one way Americans start establishing that road to financial independence is through home ownership. So growing your assets and your wealth through home ownership. We know this. This is what we live and breathe as realtors. This is how we operate, and we all understand this. So there's the non-financial benefits of home ownerships, which are huge. Now, 93% people said owning a home makes them happier. Yeah, it does. I think it does. Those of us who've worked with first-time home buyers, think of their joy when you can hand them the key and they get into that first home. There's so much happiness. It's like, we're homeowners, we've made it. 88% of people agreed that buying a home is the best decision they've ever made. 88%, that's a huge figure. People recognize home ownership is so important. And then 79% of people believe that owning a home has changed them for the better. I would think that figure would be higher than that, but still, it's true. When you get to that level of owning your own home and you're building equity and you have that sense of accomplishment, it makes you a better person. You also have more pride in that. All of this, it's like, I need to take care of my yard. I need to take care of my, the issues with my home. I need to repaint. There's things here. It changes people. It makes them take care of their investment. Now, real estate at 35% remains the most favored investment for Americans, and it has been the case since 2013, when the housing market was on the rebound. More than a third of Americans have named real estate as the top investment since 2016, and that's a Gallup poll. So 35% of Americans, when polled, say, where's the best place to put your money? And they say it's in real estate. Here's the statistics here. America's top 4 choices for long-term investment. 35% is real estate. 21% stocks. Now, for people who have money in stocks, they're up and down, doesn't necessarily make common sense. It's all over the place. It can be a safe investment. It can also crash the next day. Think about what happened just a couple of months ago when I think we were pushing we were in 29,000, the stock market had dropped down to 18,000. Talk about people losing a lot of money on paper money, I guess, but or virtual money, but it still was a huge loss. We've been on the rebound on that, but who knows. Now, savings account, 17%. What is the interest rate right now in the savings account? It's like next to nothing. And then gold, 16%. If you look over time, in 2011, when we were in the height of the recession, the housing recession, gold was the top choice for long-term investment, with real estate in second place, believe it or not, with stocks in third, and with savings account in fourth. Now, savings account, bless them, they're still really low. Today, they're ahead of gold, but stocks in second place. But look at what happened to real estate. Again, real estate, people recognize as a long-term investment and a great choice of that. So what do we need to do right now? Truth is attainable by laying fact upon fact. So as we're coming out of this pandemic recession, and yes, it's still there. We understand that. I was reading the paper this morning, and I understand what's happening up there in La Grande with all the new COVID cases up there. We're going to be dealing with this for some time until we actually do have a vaccine. We're just going to have to learn how to deal with it. We're taking care, the social distancing, I've never washed my hands more than I have before, people wearing masks, but we are still functioning. We still are making things happen, and we will continue on with that. We need to be out there letting people know that, no, real estate is strong right now. I'm going to give you some figures on that. The average economic impact of one home sale in the United States, this is an average across the country, is $88,000. There's the income generated from the real estate industry. So of one home sale, there's the total of $24,000 that comes out. That would be in sales commission, it would be in escrow and title fees, it would be in everything actually connected with a home sale. Then you have expenditures related to the home purchase of $4,650. That would be things such as, when you think about it, repairs that need to be made, or you've just moved into a new home, you need to buy a new refrigerator, new washer and dryer. I think that carpet needs to be replaced. And then you have a multiplier of housing related expenditures. So additional things that need to be done. And the person who sold you that refrigerator, if they work on commission themselves, they now have some added money. So this is how it escalates throughout a community. Of course, that figure is definitely doubled when it's actually a brand new home. If you think about the impact of a brand new home, that is huge. All the people who work on that home, all the people, the subcontractors, all the laborers, all that sort of stuff. So you think about it, this is NAR statistic. So NAR calculated the total economic impact of real estate related industries on the state economy, as well as the expenditures that result from a single home sale, including aspects like construction costs, brokerage costs, mortgage lending, and title insurance. $88,000, that's the average economic impact of a brand new home sale in the United States. Now each state is different. So if you look at a state, this is really big. Here's Oregon. One home sale, this would be new home again, $118,000 is the average economic impact of one house sale in Oregon. Think about new construction. How many new homes do we have being built here in Bend and in Redmond and in Central Oregon? We do have quite a few. We're still way below what we need, but this is a huge multiplier at how housing really does lead the industry. It's enormous, huge, huge, huge things. With that in mind, I did want to share some information which I find quite interesting. I'm going to pull this up. I shared with InfoSparks with you guys last week, but I wanted to show you, and I'm comparing months of supply here. This is just May figure. This is the red is Bend, the blue is Redmond, the green is Prineville, and the purple is Lapine. We know that a balanced market has about 6 months of supply. We, in Central Oregon, even Lapine, has way less supply than there is demand. And this is, again, this is comparing May. This is just for the month of May. Comparing it to May from a year before, we're down, everybody except Prineville, over 50% of the supply that we had a year ago. This is why, as you all know when you're out there showing your properties, that we're in things that are at certain price points are being snatched up because there's just not enough supply out there. There is a lot of demand and not enough supply. Listings are a key. They are totally a key right now. The thing that's also fascinating for this, I pulled up some data just for June. I know I made comparisons for May last month, and I didn't do a chart on this, but I just wanted to share with you what we're doing in June this year compared with June of last year. Our listings are down so far for the first 16 days in June, but not by that much. We had 23 listings the first 16 days in June last year. This year we have 17. But our pending sales, this is really big. Our pending sales are up. We are up almost $5 million in booked sales compared with 2019. That tells you our office is actually getting things in contract, a lot of stuff in contract, a lot of numbers. We're up in numbers too. We're up, not only are the properties that we're representing more costly, but we're also up in numbers. We're up five additional sales so far this month. I can't tell you how many sales we've had that have died because actually in a lot of cases we've been representing our listings that have multiple offers on them. So those all have to be booked, and so we've had a lot of dead sales connected with that too. So actual numbers of work being done, we've had a lot of deals written that didn't go anywhere because they were in multiple offers. And in closings, we are still down over a year before. That's the COVID downturn. But I'm expecting as we move forward into July and August, if that pending trend holds firm, we will see more sales as we move forward. It's very, very interesting to see what's happening with this. And right now, it is sales that are, is listings that are the key. So the more listings we get, the better we go. Really, really a key component here. Now, I know we've had a lot of new listings this last week. Keep them coming, guys. As soon as we're getting them in, I know that some of the listings we had last week, I think 3 or 4 of them that from last week are already pending. Things are moving fast. Along the same line, I do need to share some stuff with you. This is some of the logistical stuff I wanted to go over, and this is dealing with some of the legal things and the things I see every week that I need to share with you guys. Now, this is our purchase agreement, our standard residential purchase agreement. Now, if you read here, and we always gloss over this section, we always kind of go from blank to blank and look at the things we have to fill in, but this is written here in bold, right below the section on agency. This is always the top section where we talk about who's representing the buyer, who's representing the seller. The reason why this is here is because it's a state requirement, it's a state law. But right below here where it says residential real estate agreement, in bold, it says this agreement is intended to be a legal and binding contract. If it is not understood, seek competent legal advice before signing. For an explanation of the printed terms and provisions in this form regarding timing, notice, binding effect, etc., seller and buyer are encouraged to closely review the definitions and instructions section below. This is really important. Understand this is a legal and binding contract. We know this, but I have to tell you guys that in all the years I've been doing real estate, I can only think of one other time within the company I was working, and it wasn't Ben Premier. This goes way, way, way back to the earlier part of my real estate career, in which we had a seller try to kill a deal. Now, we all know that a buyer has a lot of outs in a real estate contract. Their outs, of course, are review of the property disclosure statement. Their out is also connected with review of the preliminary title report and supporting documents. They also have an out with the home inspection, and they have an out with the financing. Those are bullet point written into the deal. Plus, you may write into there, such as their sale is contingent upon the grandmother coming to town and approving of the house. So whatever else you may write into the sales agreement, those are the binding outs for a buyer. If the buyer decides to terminate based upon something other than those written into the agreement outs, say they just changed their mind, the worst scenario for them is they lose their earnest money. That's the worst. Now, for a seller, if a seller decides to terminate, there are no outs for them. And the buyer has the right to take them to court and sue them for specific performance. Like I said, in all the years I've been dealing with this, I've never had an experience with anybody outside of one time in which a seller decided, hey, I'm not selling. This week, we had 3 incidences within our brokerage in which a seller decided to terminate. 3 in 1 week. The first one, we represented the buyer. And just a week before closing, we got word that the seller didn't want to sell. And in the case of our buyer had moved his belongings here to town, had shut everything down, didn't have his place. He's geared, he's performed entirely per the terms of the contract and ready to move in. We're hearing from the seller, the seller's agent, that, hey, the seller doesn't want to sell, sorry. And it's like, no, the seller doesn't have that choice. Advice, we advised him because again, we're not attorneys. Seek competent legal advice. Go to an attorney. Often these things can be rectified through an attorney writing a letter to that seller and saying, recognize, seller, that if you choose not to perform, we can sue you for specific performance and we will go that action. When you get a letter from an attorney, sometimes these people back off. As it was, the seller did back off, and we did successfully close. Second incident, our buyer got word, our buyer's agent got word from the seller's agent that the seller changed their mind. They're not going to move forward. Had the discussion with the buyer. What do you want to do? They're very disappointed. They really like the house, just gotten into contract, really wanted to move forward on it, but decided, I guess we're not going to force the issue. We'll go see if we can find something else. So they just let the seller go. Third case, it's our seller who decided he was not going to move forward on his sale. And had a conversation with him. Very, very upset person. He just decided he was not going to move forward. Now, this is an important component connected with this. Seller's counteroffer. In the case of our seller needed to have a replacement property in order to sell his existing property. We had this advertised in MLS. We had this advertised all over the place, that for him to accept an offer, he needed to have a replacement property. When it came time to write up the counter offer to this offer, he said, I feel confident. I have an offer out there. I feel confident. I'm not going to put this into a contingency on my purchase. We had that discussion. We have it documented that our agent discussed this with him multiple times, and he said no. He was very emphatic, don't do that. To protect our seller, this verbiage should have been written into the counter offer, but again, he said don't do it. Seller's acceptance of buyer's offer is contingent upon seller's successful close of escrow of replacement property. If we happen to know what that property was, seller is in escrow on such and such a property at such and such a location, scheduled to close on such and such a date. That's a strong counter offer to a buyer. Remember, we're still in a market in which is more of a seller's market than a buyer's market. Buyers will agree, understanding that seller has to move forward onto a new property. In our case, in this situation here, because our seller dictated to us, do not write that into the counter offer, our seller didn't have an out. And so because of that, we ended up kind of going around and around and around on the whole thing. And yes, there was a lot of emotion. Our seller is, we have to understand, and everyone who's worked in real estate understands this, there's a lot of emotion connected with the sale of a home. A seller giving up the property they've lived in, moving on to another phase of life, another location, everything. It can be very emotional for them. We also are dealing with people who sometimes can be very opinionated and very dictatorial about how they want things done. And even if it may not necessarily be in their best interest, they often want to take charge, and we discuss, we document, but they move forward this way. As it is right now, crossing my fingers, our seller is moving forward. After all, he has an offer out on a replacement property, something new that popped up over the weekend, and I think we're going to be successful in closing this. But again, if this verbiage had been written into the counteroffer, there would never have been a question of it. So if you are ever at a point representing a seller whose sale has to be contingent upon them moving into some other property, write it into their counteroffer, especially in this market, because yes, it's a seller market. That means for that seller, he's a buyer in another market. There could be multiple offers. There could be all kinds of reasons why he does not get a house. And then he could potentially be homeless. That's of concern. Again, having that conversation, documenting is important. One other thing I wanted to share with you guys, and we are aware of this, but I wanted to also, this is another thing that we talk about often, buyer's repair addendum. When we check the box that we're going to have a home inspection, understand that the way the verbiage is written in the the sale agreement. We go down to the home inspection section. So licensed professional inspection. And then the buyer understands the buyer is responsible for the restoration of the property. Buyer shall have, again, 10 business days, 10 if not filled, and you can provide in anything here, 12 business days, 15 business days, whatever. After the date buyer and seller have assigned accepted this agreement to complete all inspections and the negotiations with the seller regarding any matters disclosed in the inspection report. Also, we all know now that the buyer does not provide any portion of the inspection reports to the seller unless requested by seller. However, at any time during this transaction or promptly following termination, upon request by seller, buyer shall promptly provide a copy of these reports as requested. Okay, so we all understand how that works. We also understand that in the repair addendum, once, right here, once the seller agrees to the repairs that are requested by the buyer, so once this box is checked in 936, the inspection period shall automatically terminate unless the parties otherwise agree in writing. So you have written in there, you have 10 business days or 15 business days or 12 business days to do your inspections and to negotiate your repairs. Once you've checked this box, that time frame ends. So it could be on day 5. Until we actually had this clear line here about the inspection period terminating at that point in time, people were terminating based upon an inspection up until day 10, even though we had already come to an agreement. So just needed to re-emphasize the clarity on that. Say you don't get to that point on the buyer's repair addendum. Now you're going back to the seller's repair addendum. You're back and forth negotiating. Again, same thing here. If buyer checks this box on line 36, the inspection period shall automatically terminate unless the parties agree otherwise in writing. So just to reemphasize how the timelines in this deal, in these deals work. Inspection timeline ends upon acceptance and agreement on the repairs that need to be made. There's no basis of termination after that point in time based upon home inspection. Hopefully that explains that pretty well. I think almost all of us got it down, but I just wanted to re-emphasize that just because this week there were some questions on it, and it's important that we all understand that when we're representing our clients. Remember from the very beginning of the document here, that it's a binding document. It's a binding document, and anything regarding the form, regarding the timing, notice, binding effect, if people ever have questions on this, they really should be seeking competent legal advice. We can answer questions on this, but we're not attorneys. We fill in the blanks. Hopefully that kind of covers a couple of things I really wanted to emphasize to everybody. And now what I'd like to do is open this up for any questions that people have, already haves or wants. Anybody questions, haves or wants?
Yes, I have a new listing coming in Telecom Village. It's a 1,700 square foot ranch style home. It's had some updates. It's on nearly a half-acre lot. And it will be listed for right around $370,000.
I would think under 400, anything under 4 would be very popular right now. I think it's going to go quick, Colleen, I bet.
Colleen, what's the address, please?
The address is 20343 Illahee, and that's ILLAHEE.
Thank you.
Great, and I have some buyers, so if anybody has any pocket listings, I'd love to hear about them.
Yeah, Colleen, it looks like we have some people who are asking for information, more information on that. So if you could give me the address, just put it in a little email, I'll forward it to everybody. I also got that information from Jackie and Shireen. They have a new listing coming up in Tethrow. I think it's one. I'm not sure exact price. She sent me pictures yesterday. I'm going to put that in an email to everybody too. It's not going to hit the market till the end of August. So, but her seller is willing to let us market it within our own brokerage. So I will put that out to everybody so they're aware of that one too. It's a, it looks like a really nice Tethrow listing. Anyone else have anything? Any other haves and wants? Oh, I got, here's a chat here. Oh, perfect. There we go, Colleen. So it's 20343 Ilahi, I think is how you pronounce that. Perfect.
I don't know how you say it. Sounds good.
Sounds good. Okay, great.
And also, I have a question. I love getting everybody's ideas on vendors and resources for various things they need done to their home. What I'm wondering, are these being added to our referral book? And if not, could they?
Yeah, I believe we are putting those in there. Emily, could you verify that? Brittany
has been added,
yeah.
And we've been going through the list and calling each vendor one by one to confirm they're actually still in business.
Ah, very good. Did you hear that? Emily just told me.
I did not.
Yeah, what they're doing is, yes, when people are recommending people, Brittany is adding it to the vendor list. She's also been going through the vendor list and calling all the vendors one by one to verify they're still in business. Because I know sometimes over time people do quit the business. And so we just want to make sure people are still operating. And by the way, guys, if you ever have a bad experience with someone who's in our vendor list, let us know so we can remove them. That's important too. Any other haves or wants, guys?
Yes, I wondered if anyone has a recommendation for a commercial appraiser. Just email me if you could. Thank you.
Okay. Commercial appraiser. I've heard of one, Cherry, recently. I have to see where I remember where that went.
Great.
Yeah. Anyone else have anything? Anything else to share? Okay, if not, then enjoy the stunning day and stay safe, stay healthy, and stay busy. It's a good thing. Thank you guys so much. I'll talk to you soon. Beacon Appraisal. Thank you, Tina.